Okay, good morning, everybody. Sue Grinnell, Public Health Institute. I'm very excited about this discussion today. I think it will be interesting and hopefully useful in your work. So this is on ACH design systems considerations. So we're going to be talking about networks theories, and then Stephanie will be sharing a lot of research and all kinds of great stuff. And we really want this to be interactive. Stephanie, excuse me, is a senior researcher at the Center on Network Science and a public affairs PhD student at the University of Colorado, Denver. She's served as a public health professional from 2010 to 2017 and worked and volunteered for numerous nonprofit organizations in the health, education, and environmental sectors. Through her previous position as an assessment epidemiologist in the Spokane Regional Health District's data center, she worked with dozens of organizations, excuse me, in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors on a wide range of assessment, planning, and evaluation projects. And she specializes in the design and conduct of network studies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
All right, thanks, Sue. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see just a title slide right now?
Yep.
All right. So thank you, Sue, for that introduction. Let me see if I can get all my things straightened out here. So this is me. Thank you, Sue, for the introduction. In addition to being a PhD student and working with the Center on Network Science, I do some additional consulting projects. So like the one that I'll be telling you about today, I'm working on an update of that with the Spokane Regional Health District, which is pretty exciting. I like rock climbing in my spare time, really anything outdoors. And what got me into all of the ideas of health systems and collaboration in the first place was working with Eastern Washington's ACH, Better Health Together, and a bunch of collective impact initiatives in the Spokane area, and realizing that this stuff was really, really hard. Like what you all are doing is really hard and it's really important, and we need to figure out how to do it well. And so that's what brought me to Denver to start a PhD that's essentially focused on this stuff. So that's a little bit about me. I'd like to get a sense of who is on the line right now. Allison, since I can see you, would you be willing to just let me know which ACH you're with and kind of what your role is with ACHs? And you're muted.
Hi, my name's Allison Pinella. I'm the Executive Director for Hope Rising Lake County. I'm with Hope Rising and with Lake County, California. And our role with Accountable Community for Health is that we're operating Hope Rising as it is an accountable community for health. So that's all I've got.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. All right. Kate, I see your name. Would you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Kate Kitchell. I'm a project manager with Hope Rising. I also work with Allison. We're a team in Lake County.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Catherine?
Catherine, can you, I don't know if you're muted.
I'm here, and you got me getting some tea. Sorry about that. I'm Catherine Johnson. I'm working with the Public Health Institute on several projects with Sue.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie Yodo-Kent. I'm Executive Director of the Health Education Council, and we're with the WestSAC ACH.
Awesome. Thank you, Debbie. Tara?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Tara Ranke. I'm working with Sue and Stephanie on another project that involves a large network of public health and healthcare leadership. So I'm just listening in today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here, Tara.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Martin?
Good morning.
Good morning. Martin,
I'm sorry, I just came in late, so I'm not sure exactly what we're doing.
Sure. Martin, would you just say a few words about which ACH you're with, if you are working directly with an ACH, and what your role in this context is?
Yes, this is North Coast Health Information Improvement Network, and we have the Humboldt County ACH,
Okay.
and I'm the CEO of the organization Engine.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Martin. I see Christina.
Good morning. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. So I work for the Health Department of the City of Long Beach, and I'm the project manager overseeing Excellent Thrive, which is our ACH project here in Long Beach.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Christina. Let's see, Keith.
Hi there. Good morning. Keith Bergfeld, Fresno, California, Fresno Metro Ministry, and affiliated with the FCHIP.
Awesome. And what is that?
Fresno Community Health Improvement Partnership.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it. All right, Bill, let's see. I think oh, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Bill Sadler. I'm with the Public Health Alliance of Southern California. We're a coalition of the 8 local health departments in Southern California. So I'm here mostly just to learn kind of what you're doing and you know, how we can work with our public health departments.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. So there are a few others on here that don't have names up or are numbers. So if you have not yet introduced yourself, please go ahead now. It's super helpful for me hearing kind of who's on the call and what your role is in these things, so I know where to focus and where to maybe gloss over things.
Hi, my name's Heather Hayes. I'm with the Boyle Heights Accountable Community for Health. We're in East Los Angeles, and we're working on a trauma-informed care perspective in response to community need.
Okay.
And I'm the Associate Director of the Backbone Organization, the LAC USC Medical Center Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. All right, anyone else?
I think I see Debbie. Did she introduce herself? Deb Odo-Kent.
I think we heard from Debbie. Is that her?
Yes, you heard from me.
Great. Hi, Debbie.
Hey.
All right, well, let's hop in. First, thank you all so much for doing that. It's really helpful for me hearing who's on the call. And what I got out of your introductions is that you all are the ones who are in the thick of it, and you are the ones who are thinking about how all of the different players fit together and how to work across sectors. And that's really quite fortunate because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So it seems like, Sue, you've assembled the right people. So a quick overview of what we're going to focus on today is, first I'll provide a little bit of background, just some key concepts that we're going to be working with today. I'll do a quick overview of network science and analysis. This will ground us in the case study that I'll be sharing with you all. I'll do a quick case study of a health system study that I did with Eastern Washington's ACH that we're currently in the process of updating right now. And then from there, the main thing that I hope you all can get out of this today is the system design considerations. So I did this study with Better Health Together before heading off for my PhD program. And I really wanted to figure out, how do we do this better? How do we use this information more effectively? And when we talk about health system transformation, what does that really mean? And how can what should we be thinking about as we're talking about working at the systems level? Because this is complex stuff. And so I'll close by kind of sharing the sense that I've made of this so far. There's a lot to be done, but I think I've made a little bit of progress, and that's what I'd like to share with you all today. And then I'd like to close with a discussion, reflecting on these system design considerations, and then also asking you all about some of your experiences in the areas that we know very little about when it comes to ACHs, but also similar types of initiatives like collective impact initiatives. There's a lot that we don't know. We just don't understand how some of this stuff works. And so I'm really interested in hearing from you all what your experience has been like. I am going to ask for your input a little bit throughout this presentation, so please stay tuned, be ready to contribute, whether that be through phone, chat, or video. That will make this much more fun for all of us, I hope. So let's start with a little bit of background. The problem that spurred all of this, really the problem is that, you know, our health system needs to be fixed. But the thing that has kind of spurred that is the Affordable Care Act that passed in 2010. So most people, most of the public know about the Affordable Care Act as Obamacare. But what I know and what you all know, because this is what we're all working on, is the health system transformation component of the ACA. There is a federal mandate that we need to transform our US health system. And the ACH model is one way that has been identified to do that. I think it's an incredibly promising model, which is why I'm, you know, devoting multiple years to it, and why I think you all are devoting a large chunk of your lives to it, because there's so much promise to it. So this is what kind of has spurred what we're all doing here, or at least my understanding of it. But there's a term in there that seems to catch people up quite a lot, which is health system. So I'm curious, from your perspectives, when you think health system, what do you think of? What does that mean to you? Health system.
Network of providers.
A network of providers. Awesome. Any other thoughts? We have a chat. The health insurances. Okay.
Yeah, I think of, for me, I think of a web, so health providers, but also holistic care, so different types of health, like physical, spiritual, mental, so all those working together.
Yeah, absolutely. System of care. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for sharing your understanding of the health system. And all of those are absolutely right. The way that I have been exploring health systems that I think is, that at least makes the most sense to me, is in line with the definition that the World Health Organization provided in 2017, that it consists of all organizations, people, and actions whose primary interest is to promote, restore, or maintain health. And so while many people think of health systems as a system of providers or insurers, the way that I study health systems is much broader than that. It is looking at all of the individuals or organizations who in some way contribute to the health of populations. And so the study that I'll be sharing with you today is looking at health systems from a very broad context. We called it the population and social determinants of health system, because we're not just looking at health clinics and hospitals and insurers. We're looking at schools and food banks and county government. How are all of these different cross-sector organizations working together to create the conditions that we need to live healthy lives? And so that I've learned trips some people up, because when I say health system, I'm talking about something different than I think a lot of people are. So I think it's important to start there. But part of the reason why I take this super broad kind of concept of what is a health system is stemming from the Public Health 3.0 movement. So as Sue shared, my background is in public health, and we have been really focused on moving from traditional approaches to population health toward a cross-sector collaborative approach that looks at improving the social determinants of health. And so, of course, if our social determinants of health are looking at housing and transportation, that's not something that hospitals and health clinics can do alone. That's not something public health can do alone. That's something that all of the organizations that contribute to community well-being need to come together to improve. And so that's why when I study health systems, I choose to look at a variety of sectors in that picture. This is a quote from one of my favorite articles on cross-sector collaboration in the public health and healthcare context specifically, just making the argument that cross-sector collaborations and partnerships are an essential component of the strategy to improve health and well-being in the United States. Researchers, practitioners alike, we agree on this. We need to come together if we want to improve health in the way that we all, I think, would like to see our outcomes improved when it comes to health disparity, health equity and all of that. So when we're thinking about this, the importance of collaboration across sectors, one of the things that I believe you all know as ACH practitioners, because I know that measurement is a key component of the ACH, is super important. When you want to understand something in an objective way, when you want to come up with a plan that is using information that is provided by the community, so data is essentially what drives our action in ACHs, or at least one element of it. And so when we talk about collaboration, but we also know that measurement is challenging, measuring collaboration is super challenging. So I'm interested, how do you all do this right now? Do you even think about measuring collaboration? And if you do, what does that look like in your ACH? All right, very simply, who shows up to the meetings?
Christina,
Okay.
that's exactly what I was about to say before you said that. Yeah, it's like who continues to respond to your emails?
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that would be in like in evaluation context, looking kind of at your outputs, or in some way your short-term outcomes. Who's showing up, who's staying engaged. That is an excellent way to begin to measure collaboration, and oftentimes that's all you need. One of the challenges that I've run into with collective impact initiatives and other ACHs is sometimes we need to measure collaboration in a more in-depth, comprehensive way. And so things like seeing who's showing up to meetings, who's responding to emails, who's coming to events, that is an awesome starting point. And sometimes you need to go a little bit further. So that's where my journey with figuring out network science and network analysis began, was actually with an education-focused collective impact initiative. But we needed to figure out what does collaboration actually look like, measure how it changes over time, and all of that. And so this took me and others in the team with which I was working down this journey of, let's figure out how to do this in a really rigorous way, which brought us to network analysis. So I'm going to share just a little bit with you about network analysis. So you have an understanding of what I'm talking about when I get into the case study. So first, when I talk about a network, that's just a very general thing. I mean, a collection of entities that are interconnected with links. This could be web pages that point to each other, people who are friends, organizations that undertake collaborative projects like a collective impact initiative or ACH. I mean, we have biological networks, we have transportation networks, they're everywhere. One thing that I think is helpful just to touch on is that the term system and network, they're often used interchangeably. There are tons of similarities. The main difference is when we talk about a system, we're talking about essentially a network that has a specific purpose. So a set of connected things forming a complex whole. So when we're talking about a health system, this could be a group of organizations working together for the purpose of improving health in a county or for a specific population. Whereas a network is broader than that. It's a group or system interconnected in some way. And so all systems are networks. Not all networks are systems, because not all networks have a specific purpose. So that's, I think, just a helpful thing to think about when we're talking about networks and systems and how the two terms relate. One of the things that is really fortunate for us at this point in time is that over the last couple of decades, an entire discipline has emerged to help us not only better understand networks through methods, but also through theories. So when it comes to interpreting, like, what does this mean? We have this entire discipline now at our disposal, which has all the tools to guide us, or at least is working on developing them. Network science comes from a variety of other disciplines, math, physics, computer science, statistics, sociology, and it can be applied in a variety of ways. And so, I've mostly applied it at the interorganizational level, but it can be used to understand within organization collaboration. It can be used to understand biological networks, like in your brain, transportation networks, all sort of stuff. And then the primary mode of inquiry that's used in network science is network analysis. You all might have seen network maps before. That's these little web-looking things on the right-hand side. But I think it's important when people talk about network analysis just to understand that there are several things going on that are deeper, that go deeper than these network maps. So through network analysis, we can analyze a network in a similar way that I would analyze population health as an epidemiologist, where we can understand it in a really granular way and we can track how it's changing over time. Using network analysis, we can understand networks at the network level, so understanding the whole system, the entire dynamics, or we can understand the individuals within the system and have a better understanding of how they fit into the system, and see where they, where we can tap into each individual's strengths. The other thing to note is just that little table kind of to the upper left of those maps. Every map like this, if it was generated through network analysis, not just a network mapping program, also has statistics. And so this can be great for especially evaluating network change over time, which can be hard to do if you're just looking at the visuals. But the visuals sometimes are all you need. Sometimes you just need that quick high-level overview of how are things connected, and that is that. So some of the ways that I've used network analysis for continuous improvement include identifying silos in organizations and how organizations work together, identifying individual or periphery organizations, so getting a sense of where people fit in the system, identifying needed connections. So if there are relationships that maybe should exist in the system, but they're not there, this is a great way to see that. Planning for, improving systems, for building or restructuring systems, evaluating how like a health system changes over time, and looking at the quality and type of connections over time. So there are a lot of different ways that this can be used. I mean, similar to any kind of research study, any kind of analysis, it's just looking at a different unit of analysis, essentially. So then to close on this section, I just wanted to share with you all some ways that you can be thinking about integrating network mapping and analysis into your own work if this is something you're interested in. The first is systems thinking. And so this is where you take a pen and a paper and a couple of bright minds, and you come together and you work through one of these, actor maps, mind maps, issue maps, causal loop diagrams. You can Google any one of these search terms and find a plethora of resources on how to do this stuff. But oftentimes this is all you need, is just thinking through with some folks who are engaged in the process, what does our territory look like, and map out the system. If you want to get into something that's a bit more technical, you can use network mapping tools. The partner tool incorporates some network analysis components. The others, Polynode, Kumu, Kinetic, those are all network mapping. So if you're just interested in mapping, and then you can also do entire network studies, which is what I really love doing and what I'm about, an example of which I'm about to share with you all. So before we move into the case study, so an example of how network analysis has been used with ACHs, I'm interested in hearing from you all. How have you used network mapping and or analysis in your work? Or have you seen it used by others? So Christina created a Kumu map to help show the group how connected we actually are, and so that we can reduce duplication of efforts. Awesome, Christina.
I don't know if it is exactly with what you were talking about, but we recently started using this online program called Basecamp, which is an online platform where I can keep like the most updated all of our information documents that we have. So they're all in one central location that anyone can go on and add or edit. And then we have all of our partners active on the site to do like daily posts, share what's going on with their organizations. And we're still like in the transitional time, but it seems to be effective, and it goes right to our phones. So it's available whenever we need it. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's that wouldn't necessarily be network mapping or analysis, but that is an awesome network intervention as far as like creating more connectivity within your network, making sure that people can share resources. So like that type of network intervention. And also, I mean, this is like just the researcher nerding out right now, but you're also creating a bunch of data that if you ever wanted to map your network, you could use all of that Basecamp information to look at and like assess how people are interacting with one another through that platform.
Oh, it's a great idea. Thanks.
This is Debbie. We've done like a connections mapping approach, and have given out kind of baseline and then incremental follow-up surveys to find out how people have connected or worked together in the past, if they've known each other, if they've partnered on something, or if there's been a joint kind of initiative planned, or they go to the same meetings, or just sort of trying to document an initial kind of sphere of influence, and then how those, how the connections increase over time in service of the overall mission.
Yeah, awesome. And so will you be using that primarily? It sounds like you've already done some like planning around it. Will you be using that primarily for evaluation over time?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we wanted to kind of document the baseline of who's in the room and have they had a relationship before, and how do we leverage those relationships, and also the kind of alignment of the kind of work that each entity does in service of the overall mission and business goal.
That's awesome. That's great to hear, Debbie.
And the other thing is I think that the memorandums of understanding, the MOUs that we had each of our partners fill out and complete, to me, it was just another kind of piece of this whole connections mapping.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, as that evolves and changes and increases, we could see a deepening of the connections and networking.
Yeah, absolutely, Debbie. That's great to hear.
This is Heather from Boyle Heights, and I really appreciate what Debbie just said, because we did something similar. We hired an external evaluator to come and do a baseline evaluation of our collaborative last May-June timeframe. And so we're anticipating doing our 1-year follow-up now to see kind of what's changed and what's moved over the course of the year. I don't know if we're actually going to hit this May-June timeframe. It may be pushed a little bit, but we, I'm back in contact with the evaluator to think about that wrap around to really see kind of where things have moved and grown, and just how much more comfortable through the course of the collaborative people are feeling in terms of trust building and relying and working with one another. It's a county community partnership. So what we're really trying to see is greater sense of comfort and connection between the county agency participants and the community-based organization participants. So that'll be interesting to see. In our other collaborative that kind of feeds into the larger ACH collaborative, we also just recently were working with an external evaluator to do one-on-one touch point mapping. I don't know what it's called exactly, but it was a survey tool that they put out to see like all of the members of the organization, who do you most closely work with in the other organizations, to kind of see like where at what levels, leadership connects versus connects in terms of implementing the work and understanding the joint initiative. So that data collection is just underway right now. So hopefully we'll see a report back on that in the next, maybe 60 to 90 days.
That's awesome, Heather. So what I'm hearing from you all is that you are already savvy systems thinkers, and you're putting this stuff into action in your everyday work. I love hearing that. So what I'm going to share with you now is just one more example to build on all of these examples that you've already shared of how you're doing this work. to show you just another example of how this could be done and how we've been thinking about it with in Eastern Washington. So, voila. So I'm just going to breeze through this study because I really want to get to the design considerations. But this study, I'll use this study as examples for the design considerations. So I think it's important to at least show this at a high level. But first, I want to acknowledge that this was a collaborative effort, you know, like all the things that we're doing, the study that I'm about to share with you, all of these wonderful people and more were involved in making this study happen. Many of these people are involved in the second round of making it happen. And so this is not just a study that I completed off on my own. All these great people had something to do with it. So we're talking about Better Health Together here. In Washington State, ACHs are formed at the regional level. And so Better Health Together covers 6 counties and 3 tribal nations. It's home to about 600,000 people, and it covers both urban and rural areas. So we have some interesting things to think about when we're thinking about health system transformation in Eastern Washington. So some of the research questions that we sought to answer with this study are, what does Eastern Washington's health system look like? So we started out not even really knowing. If we take this broad conception of a population and social determinants of health system, who all is involved in that? We didn't know. And so our first step was, which are the organizations outside of healthcare that contribute to health in some way, and what is that way? So we wanted to know, where's the health system focusing its efforts, not just the hospitals or health plans, but where is the actual Eastern Washington's health system really focused? Which organizations are key participants? How do those participants interact with one another? And how do subsystems differ by sector, geographic service area, and linkage type? So to answer a lot of those questions, we sent out a survey, both electronic and paper. We used a 3-phase snowball sampling method to network bounding, and that's simply because we didn't have our network bounded. So we needed to figure out who all is even in our network. That was one of the big things. We ended up identifying 564 organizations with over 17,000 linkages among those organizations. And we used a variety of tools for the study process. So the results of this study are, first, this is what we learned in a very abstract way, the Eastern Washington's health system looks like. So each dot on that map is an organization. Each dot is sized by the number of times that other organizations reported working with that organization, and the dots are colored by the sector in which the organization works. And so just at a very high level, that was our health system. That was an awesome thing to know because we didn't know that before. We were also interested in looking at specific types of interactions. So we looked at collaboration, referral, data exchange, education, and financial support, and specifically asked people, how do you work together in these variety of ways? And this allowed us to look at some really cool things. So we got to see, these are the different subsystems, essentially, looking at how do people collaborate with one another? How do they refer to one another? You can see that most organizations were involved in collaboration, and only a handful were, well, I suppose that's more than a handful, but relatively few organizations were involved in financial support, and the patterns there were really interesting. And we would not have been able to identify, we would not have easily been able to identify those patterns without mapping it out like this. We were also able to look at how organizations in each of those specific geographic service areas worked together, and then also across counties, which was again something that we kind of anecdotally heard about but didn't really know from the perspective of the organizations. So that's one thing that I love about this method, is that we're going out and what they think and what their experience is, and then we can use that to better understand the health system from their perspective, which I think is a cool thing about this method. We are also interested in looking at specifically how do sectors interact, and so this is just a visual of all of the connections between organizations in each of the 5 sectors that we studied. And then we can also look at how do organizations within sectors interact with one another. And so like one thing that I think is really cool here is in the bottom left-hand corner, you see all of those education organizations, and look how well connected they are. Organizations just within the education sector are working with other organizations just within the education sector to improve health in Eastern Washington. And I think that's something that's really cool and really important when we're thinking about engaging across sectors and the importance of cross-sector collaboration and improving health. So that was just high-level overview of that study. If you're interested in seeing the full report or learning more about that, just let me know. But I want to dig into the considerations that I've, from doing that study, from spending the last couple of years digging into the literature and theory and all of this stuff. These are the things that I've come out with as what I think is important when we're talking about transforming health systems. So the first thing is that community is at the center of it all. I believe you all know that this is an important component of the ACH model, but it's important to remember even in this context when we're talking about health systems, I'm talking about health systems at the organizational level, but even then community context is so important. Thinking about knowing what is the history of this community with which you're working, engaging community members in the process. This is really central to the other 3 considerations that I'll be digging into. So that is a first consideration, I suppose. From there, we know that collaborative networks addressing a broad problem set should have diverse member representation. There's loads of past research that has shown this. And one way we looked at this with Better Health Together's study was once we had the sample and we could see, okay, who are all of the organizations involved in Eastern Washington's health system, that then allowed us to look at participation in some different ways. So this is who responded to the survey compared to who was active in the health system. And we saw that, that organizations in the education sector and the health sector were overrepresented in participation, whereas organizations in the public sector were underrepresented. And when we looked at geographic service area, there was a huge overrepresentation from the urban core in Eastern Washington and underrepresentation from some of those smaller and more rural counties. And so this creates the challenge of, if we're going to design a health system, who are we designing it for? And if we have a diversity of participants, it is more likely that the system that we design when we are working to transform the health system will work for diversity of organizations and people throughout the ACH region or county with which you're working. So this was the first thing. Diversity of participants is hugely important when thinking about transforming health systems. Next, I just got click happy on my computer and opened something. Okay, I have it back. So next is equity. We know that ensuring equitable representation of historically underrepresented groups is a vital component of successful health systems. So one way to look at this is back to our health system map, geographically oriented. And we can see that, so remember the size of the dot is a kind of proxy for an organization's power in the system. And so just by taking a glance at this map, you can see that power in organizations in this system are consolidated in 3 areas throughout Eastern Washington. There are 3 other counties that are rural, oftentimes anecdotally feel ignored. The tribal nations, which have a lot of historical context there. There are no relatively powerful organizations in some of these marginalized areas. And so that leads us to really need to consider how are resources being distributed, how is information being distributed, and whose voices are at the table. Are we intentionally engaging organizations from some of these more marginalized communities? So that's one way to think about equity in a health system at the organizational level. Another way is if we want to look at governance. So who's actually making the decisions? This is a comparison of who's involved in the health system versus who's at the board of directors, sitting on the board of directors for Better Health Together. And we can see that every geographic service area is underrepresented on the board of directors, except the tribal nations is overrepresented, awesome. And the regional organizations, those organizations that serve more than one county, are also overrepresented. When we look at sectors, we see that, again, every sector is underrepresented except for the health sector, which when we're talking about cross-sector collaboration and one of the things we found is that the social sector is in many ways the backbone of the health system, broadly conceived as a social determinants of health system. And it's wonderful, like kudos to Better Health Together for having social sector representation, education sector representation, public sector representation. But this is just one other way of looking at is there equity in how decisions are being made? Is there equity in how resources and power is being distributed throughout the region? So next system design consideration is, are we being equitable in how organizations are engaged and how decisions are being made? And third is centrality. So we know that health systems with a coordinating entity, such as a backbone organization, that have high centrality, so are very central to the system, are associated with better outcomes. One way that we can look at this through the network context is by seeing where Better Health Together fits in the network. So this is the Eastern Washington's health system laid out in just a bit different of a way. All of the gray dots are organizations, the orange dot in the center is Better Health Together. And here we see, again, nodes are sized by their kind of like relative importance or centrality in the system. And we see that Better Health Together was doing pretty well. I mean, this was only a couple of years after it was created. But we also see that this is an area for improvement, that at this time there were several other organizations that were objectively more central in the health system. And so this is an area where, since we know that highly centralized health systems are more effective in many ways, this is another area that we identified that can be considered and an area to be potentially improved. So those are the three main considerations that from this network study and from drawing on all the literature on collaboration and health systems, I think are really good and generalizable places to start for ACHs. So to recap, the first thing is understanding your community and involving them throughout the entire process, which feeds into all three of these. The first being striving for representative participation, diversity in your system. You can do this by engaging underrepresented groups throughout your county or city. Ensuring equitable distribution of power among organizations. So at a county level, this could be across cities. At a city level, this could be across organizations. But really ensuring that there's equity in decision-making and how resources are distributed. And then finally, centrality. This could be working to increase a coordinating entity's centrality, which could be done by connecting with diverse groups. So as you'll see, a lot of these things are kind of intertwined. By improving one, it will ideally lead to improvements in the others. So what's next with this? We're currently in the process of repeating this study. We'll be looking at what's changed in the system over time. We'll be looking specifically at where are opportunities for improving care coordination and how have network interventions changed the health system. And then for me personally, I'll be focusing my dissertation over the next couple of years on exactly this sort of stuff, on how do we figure out within an ACH context, how to collaborate and design systems more effectively to get the outcomes that we want to improve the health of populations. So before I move into some of the discussion questions, I want to ask, are there questions about anything that I just shared with you all? All right. So if you could please ready yourselves to contribute. We're moving into discussion. The first thing is, I want to reflect with you all on these 3 system design considerations. And I'm interested in hearing, how have you seen communities be effectively engaged in ACHs? How have you seen diversity and equity be honored in the work of your ACH? And what has your experience been like with having a highly centralized or decentralized health system? So having a backbone entity or not. And we don't need to answer all of these questions or go in any order, but I am interested in hearing your thoughts on these design considerations.
So this is Heather from the Boyle Heights ACH, and I think one of the things that's worked very effectively for us is LA County is governed by 5 supervisors, the Board of Supervisors, and the supervisor who oversees the district in which our ACH is located also is the area of the largest safety net hospital in LA County, which is the backbone hospital we work with. She's very, very committed to community engagement efforts. So she's supported the county side to engage with us around the work. There actually was a board resolution passed that said community engagement needs to be included in new developments that are happening on and around our campus at the LAC USC Medical level. Support was really, really instrumental in making sure that the county shows up faithfully and shows up, with an open mind. We're working on that open-mindedness, and we're working on kind of building that trust and building a real repartee with county that rewards them for the openness towards community engagement. But that's been super significant. And then secondly is ensuring that among the community-based organization partners we have are a lot of agencies that do a lot of direct grassroots effort and are really strong community mobilizers. Not every partner, not every agency has that toolkit or has those resources and residents to draw upon, but having a good representation of those agencies as well, even if their primary interest may not be housing, may not be health. Yeah. For example, there's a lot of issues around gentrification in the area in which we work. And so we have a very strong partner that's very deeply connected to mobilizing community around housing equity. But that ties in, obviously, as we know, very much to the social determinants of health. But we've relied on that agency and others like it, some that are related to like youth empowerment and social justice issues, but making sure that you cast the net broadly to get deeply into community, and then bringing those representatives to the table when we have the conversations around health issues and health equity has been really significant for us. I'd say diversity and equity, we're trying very hard. Our particular community, our intimate community related to the hospital and our work is 96, 97% Latino, large percentage of undocumented. So those populations definitely get a lot of acknowledgement. We also look at the most vulnerable members of the population. We have specific call out to ensure we're looking at veterans, formerly incarcerated, homeless, and the undocumented. As well as those with disabilities. So that's one of the ways that we really focus on diversity and equity, is by calling out those specific vulnerable populations, because ethnically speaking, we're much more monolithic in this area. But of course, this is a community of high need, and we definitely recognize that. I'd say if we fall in short in any area, it is recognizing the smaller minority populations within this larger Latino network. We're working to see if we should be more embracing of Asian American voices and perspectives, and we do have intention to do that, but I would say we haven't really done that yet. So that's one of the things that we're still working towards.
Yeah. Heather, thank you so much for sharing. Are there any great challenges or barriers that you've encountered in, so you just shared this, it sounds like you have considered many of these things and you're actively working toward designing an effective system. What are the kinds of main challenges that you've faced in this kind of engagement that you've just talked about?
Well, I think as a CASHI accelerator site, we have been on a shorter timeline and on a less financially resourced timeline than some of the other ACHs. I think one of the biggest challenges we've seen is just maintaining the management time and attention to support the initiative. It's very, very time consuming work. I think it's one of those things that you think everyone's here for the same good purpose. We're all committed to the same ideals. Get us all in a room. We can make things happen easily, but it isn't easy work. It's very hard work. It's very time consuming. It takes a lot of calls, a lot of meetings, a lot of calls, prepping for the call to just get everyone on the same page. And then there's just a lot of, debriefing and really making sure people build the comfort level that they really can share a point of view with one another honestly, and that we recognize that people come from very different points of view to this work. So, people come in with their blinders on and their blind spots, and we recognize that, and we try to work together to kind of modify point of view where we can. So I think that's the lesson learned, I think, is just the resource intensity of what it requires and the time commitment that it requires to do the work well. Those are the two things that I would say. I think everyone acknowledges it's hard work at the outset, but till you really get in it, it's like messier and harder than you think. So I think those are the main things. I don't know if there's other challenges I think other people have already mentioned, just keeping commitment going forward. Interestingly enough, we've had, with the integrated health agency here, there's Department of Health Services, Department of Public Health, and Department of Mental Health. And of those three agencies, one of them really doesn't want to show up and doesn't want to participate. And we've had a real struggle to try to, find the right connector person. We'll kind of be led down a path that this will be your point person. And then that person says, sorry, I can't do it. So it's interesting how we've got, real successes in some areas. And then even so, it's not a perfect fit. It's not a perfect model. We're still trying to find those right leaders in some of the agencies we're trying to work with that will really prioritize this work and commit to it. So, you can only do the best you can, but it's always disappointing when you feel like a real gap that you can't seem to overcome. It's just, there's just not the interest or the willpower on the other side to meet you halfway.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I heard there is that the main challenge is being resource constraints, time constraints, and collaboration is really, really hard in practice. Any other thoughts on the design considerations before we?
There was a chat, Deb put in a chat too. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, perfect, Debbie. So our group has prioritized diversity and equity resident engagement, and we continue to discuss how this will meaningfully be integrated into our ACH. We have nonprofit entities, civic and ethnic organizations who serve diverse communities in our city, but we are working to clearly define how we are operationalizing diversity into the structure of our governance. I love hearing that, Debbie. And one of the things that since I work with organizations and systems, one of the things that it seems people are sometimes not used to thinking about is equity at the organizational level. But one of the things that I think is really important is, if we don't have some level of equity in the organizations that are serving different groups of people, how do we expect there to be equity at the population, at the individual level, if we're not making sure that the organizations serving those people also have, if in one county, none of the organizations have any resources, it kind of makes sense that people in that county will not have as good of outcomes. So I love hearing that you are thinking about how to operationalize diversity and structure into your governance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it sounds easy. I mean, it sounds like you sent the intention, but when you kind of really dig into it, we're trying to, be very honest with ourselves, about what we mean by resident engagement, how we're operationalizing on it. Is it, where along the continuum are we really putting our effort? And we've had a lot of discussion about, do we want to have a seat, for example, on our governance structure just for a resident? But then what does that mean then in terms of how we operate and little things like when we hold our meetings and where we hold our meetings, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that you're thinking about that though and working on finding solutions. I think that's important. All right, any other thoughts here before we move on? And Sue, we are going until 12 p.m.
Yeah, either. I mean, I think we allowed a little bit of time to go till 12:15, but you know, if we're done early, then that's okay too. So we've got till 12:15 on the books.
Okay. Well, I have a couple more questions, and let's see. If you all are interested in talking about these questions, I would love to talk with you about them. If not, that is perfectly fine. We can breeze through. But so these next two questions that I want to ask you all is looking at areas where we don't know. So one of the things that I've been, you know, really focused on is figuring out what do we already know, what research has already been done, and what can we draw from that? And then figuring out what are the gaps in what we know. Where do we just genuinely not understand how things work and how they should work? And one of those things is how the system context surrounding your ACH affects your ability to collaborate. So when I say system context, this could mean things like existing community strengths, funding, the policy and legal frameworks, or political dynamics in your county. So we assume that all of these things, the system context around your ACH, we assume that these affect the ways that you collaborate. And Heather, you mentioned this a little bit as far as, you know, the resource and time constraints and just collaboration being really hard and buy-in. So what I'm interested in hearing from you all is, how does the system context shape your ability to effectively collaborate? What most stands out there?
Stephanie, can I just ask, so when you have
Absolutely.
your external initiatives,
Yeah.
I think, you know, just to clarify, I think a lot of the sites, there are more than one initiative that they're either part of, managing, a recipient of, and then there's new initiatives that come in.
Okay.
Right into the community. So just maybe speaking a little bit more about that, because I think I hear and see that a lot.
Yeah. Well, so when I think of external initiatives, I think of, you know, so there's Better Held Together, ACH in Eastern Washington, and then there is Priority Spokane, which focuses on the top priority as identified by the countywide needs assessment every 3 years. And then there's Accelerate Success, which is a collective impact initiative focused on improving education. And so what that would mean from the system context is, I mean, if you want to get really into it, like, how are these almost different collaborative initiatives aligning or influencing each other? Or if you're having difficulties getting people at the table and getting people engaged in your ACH, is it because they're being asked to participate in this education initiative and this economic development initiative? So that's when I included this external initiatives, that's kind of what I was thinking about for the system.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Sue?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of validates. I mean, I think they could all probably speak to it. I mean, Fresno is part of many. Heather, you are Humboldt. And I think, you know, so just navigating all of that, I think, and, you know, when you're trying to create this system when maybe some others aren't necessarily, it may be more programmatically or funding driven. And so there is a difference. So I'd love to hear from you all, like, you know, just on this one, because I think it's been a big struggle. And maybe not, I think, because maybe some of you have all, I think you're finding ways to work within that context.
This is Keith in Fresno. I can reflect for a minute. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
So our approach has been more pragmatic, at least at Fresno Metro Ministry, and we support the Fresno Community Health Improvement Partnership through a lot of our work in the community. For example, in our food system work, we decided it was really going to be hard to create the kind of DNA for action by constituent community members and others unless we kind of engage them in a larger body of work. So we have a food recovery network. It's now 45 churches and community-based organizations and senior centers, et cetera, that receive food every day. And we started to build relationships. We collect food from schools and retailers and farmers and packers, et cetera. We're starting to capacitate the system members and some of the residents in each one of those little orbits with asset-based community development training, cooking skills classes, you know, kind of starting to bring them together for a lot of different issues. And we're finding that some of them are really asking, can we do more? And we're going, well, yeah, you can. So we have a little community very, very distressed in Southeast Fresno called Calwa. It's unincorporated. And that group that we've been delivering food to for 2 years, we've built sufficient trust with them. They're now planning a health fair to engage the other members of their larger community. Kind of these people are working kind of out of a church, and some of them go to the church, some of them don't. And I use that as an illustration that it's hard to build trust with theoretical initiatives, with things that are sort of ambiguous in terms of the outcomes. When you build a relationship around, like in our case, food delivered every week, and how to use that food well, and how to understand nutrition and cooking skills, and how to take it to another level. That's kind of the approach we've taken. We also have a place-based initiative, community economic development, new businesses, new buildings, new jobs, and things along a decaying commercial corridor. And we're building hundreds of relationships with residents that we're grooming for them to act on their own issues. And ultimately, those self-interest involve some sort of health. So for me, there's sort of this theoretical approach to all this, or some sort of on-the-ground pragmatic organizing around, the felt needs of people, and then figuring out a way to take them into the larger health system work. Yeah. I'll just leave it at that.
I love that, Keith.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
awesome.
It sounds like you are expanding on community strengths, but also I just love hearing your approach to, the practical approach of, we're all in this together. We are all human on this world, and we need to do things. And by doing things, that is one of the best ways to build trust and show that you're really in it. I love hearing that.
I appreciate you saying that, Stephanie, because that's sort of the thing we've learned that really works. If we talk and talk and talk, great ideas, great structures, great heuristics, whatever. But if we actually do things together, like plant a garden and celebrate the harvest, that just changes the dynamics in all these relationships.
Yep. And also, the best theories of collective action completely reinforce your very practical approach that, repeated in-person interactions are one of the best ways to build trust and commitment. And so you're like, even the theoretical wonky stuff completely backs up what you're doing there. Any other
Thanks for letting me spout off.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on how the system context affects your ability to collaborate? All right. So the next thing, building off of that last question, the other thing, one of the main other things that we don't know is how collaboration dynamics in an ACH contribute to the achievement of outcomes. So kind of the theory of action here is that if we collaborate and if we align our mission and vision, and if we all decide that we're working toward the same thing, that ideally the output of that collaboration will lead to outcomes like systems changed or improving health equity. But when it comes to understanding the dynamics of that collaboration, so how it actually happens. So this would be like, what is the process for developing a shared vision and common agenda? What is your governance structure like? What are the levels of trust and commitment among participants? We think that all of those things, that if we understand those better, there are ways that we could design collaboration dynamics in an ACH to optimize our chances of improved outcomes, to create these healthy communities that we all desire to see, but we don't understand. We don't understand what are the most important aspects of these collaboration dynamics. What I'm interested in hearing from you all is, what has your experience been like in this? How do collaboration dynamics in your ACH contribute to the achievement of outcomes in your county?
Yeah, I'd love to hear you guys. I mean, I know there's these questions are, you're all in it. I'm not sure at this point, you know, just to the piece about achievement of outcomes, because I think people are kind of, you know, in some cases developing some of this. So, but yeah, I'd love to hear from some of you just in terms of what you think on this.
I also wonder if we took, I wonder if we took 2 steps back, because there's an assumption here. There's an assumption that the way people collaborate will lead to better outcomes. Yeah. But I also wonder if you all think that's true. Maybe, I mean, with Keith's example, maybe collaboration, the way we collaborate doesn't really matter that much. Maybe it's just we need to be on the ground making things happen. But Keith also mentioned building trust, and so that's a collaboration dynamic. So I suppose starting at the ground, do you all even think that the way that you collaborate, that the way that you structure the collaborative aspect of your ACH is something that's important, that you need to understand that to get to where you want to go? You'll buy into that.
You know, I may be heretical, but I just like to say that most collaborations that I'm aware of, either people are paid to collaborate or they're there because of FOMO. They're afraid to miss out on something. Yeah. And it's very rare that they actually start with a sense of shared aspiration that's kind of chiseled out through some hard work, and then they work on a strategy to actually achieve something together. And that third one is sort of a community organizing model. And I keep pitting that sort of against the literature about collaboration, that sometimes you just kind of get together and if you got some shared goals, then, you know, figure out how to develop power, not worry about the distribution of power, develop enough power to actually get something done.
Yeah. I appreciate that perspective. I think there's a lot of validity to that.
This is Heather again. I think in the work we're doing, again, we're trying to move county agencies to adopt a more community-based mindset or a community collaborative mindset. And I think for a lot of them, they have the obligation to kind of check certain boxes off in the work they do around community engagement, but to make it more meaningful and make it deeper, that's really the purpose and role of this collaboration. And so I think that's kind of the goal that we're really working towards, and we're trying to build more structure into our governance to be more, you know, to be more clear, to be able to invite new members in with a lot of clarity around how we operate and our vision. The initial group of people that formed the collaborative have been kind of a little more freewheeling, but now we're, you know, 18 months in and kind of figure like it's time to get a bit more structure so we can really take a hard look at who's at the table, who's missing, and how do we bring those new people in, but kind of create a sense of structure and accountability to the work that we're all going towards. And then because we have this county community partnership, we are trying to move to having the opportunity to, for example, vote on issues. And we know that county agencies won't always be able to vote. So we're trying to build those decision-making tools that will accommodate all of our members, but really allow this collaborative to have a uniform voice and, you know, an attitude around decision-making that works. And then we can have that uniform voice so we can endorse new projects and new initiatives that affect the health of the community we serve. And then the long-term goal is, of course, that we become an equivalent to some kind of standing committee adjacent to the county that really is the go-through, the pass-through agency that new initiatives want to come to get our endorsement, to get our feedback on the issues that they're going to, you know, or the work that they're doing and how it might impact community health. So that's where we're at with it. It's definitely very much a midpoint point in the journey, but we feel like we've definitely made some good success. We have our next collaborative meeting this Friday, and we'll be doing a report back from our governance committee on how we might expand and grow membership, and also exit out members that have been not participating. I mean, we really started out very organically, like everyone who's invited, just show up at the table and you're all equal, but then we want more people to come. So we didn't really have a lot of structure initially, and now we're trying to finally put that in place. But certainly I like structure, and so I'm kind of eager for it. But to the point of my colleague from Fresno, there's so much work that has to happen behind the scenes in a non-structured way that's really about relationship building. That's what enables the structured conversations to flow smoothly at the Friday partnership meetings. But there's all these little offshoots and sidelines and agreements that are made with the community partners in the side. And that's where I think so much work happens, because it's so multi-layered and there's so many dynamic relationships that need to get nurtured, and everyone needs to feel acknowledged, and everyone needs to feel like, you know, they matter and that they have a point of contribution to the work. So it's complicated in that way.
What I'm hearing from you, Heather, is that you are really fine-tuned into the collaboration dynamics, and you're working on governance structure, on relationship building, on setting up rules and expectations so people know what to expect. So I'm hearing, it seems like you seem to believe that if you structure these collaboration dynamics in a way, your chances of success of achieving those outcomes are greater.
I certainly think so, because I feel like we've got such a, like, there's the people that come from the county side that expect this very formulaic structure to the environment. They want these public comment sessions at the microphone and these very structured ways that they're used to doing things. And we don't want to completely adhere to that, but we don't want to negate the county process either. So I think for us, at least my sense of things is, I prefer a little bit of structure so that it just gives us a common shared understanding of how we move forward, and a real sense of how we build, how we build our membership and how we build a sense of accountability and responsibility among the members, so that we can not close the door, but actually open the door more broadly, but in a structured way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm almost realizing, so Keith, your example was talking about leadership capacity. You said we need to build enough power, not necessarily worry about the distribution of power, but enough power. And so that, could be resources, relationships, but also potentially leadership capacity to make that happen.
All the above.
Yep. All right, any other thoughts on how collaboration dynamics affect your ACH's ability to move towards those outcomes?
This is Debbie, and I really echo what I've heard before from the other participants. For me, it's, there's all these kind of approaches and frameworks to follow, but it's very local, and it's very unique to each community that we work in, and it's a combination of, like, we were really on this path of trying to build kind of our leadership and governance structure, and our group was sort of put a hold on it and said, why don't we do something while we're building the structure, so we have context to build, as opposed to form this governance structure before we have been able to deeply work together. And so those are kind of two parallel things. And although we, have embraced, resident engagement and inclusivity, we're really trying to contextualize that. I think, for me, one of the things that I see happen after the last, year, 18 months, is that the folks around the table are really realizing and seeing the duplicity of some of the things that are happening with each of the partners. In other words, every partner, the city, public health, healthcare systems, talk about resident engagement and are doing it in a vacuum. And we're having kind of an opportunity to say, are there opportunities for us to do this in a shared way?
Yeah.
And define that more in a comprehensive way, as opposed to, the city going out and doing resident engagement around parks and public spaces, and the hospitals doing it around just looking at needs assessment and other organizations. So I'm seeing that kind of alignment and leveraging happening, that to me is all in service of trying to, all in service of contributing to some higher outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love thinking or hearing that you're aligning all of these different efforts. So we are at time. I had I suppose two last questions that I wanted to ask, but if you have any thoughts on these, please feel free to follow up with an email. I'm interested in what kinds of questions do you have about how ACHs operate? And I'm thinking like research questions, and what kind of things would you like to see done? And this is because I'm researching ACHs, I hang out with people who are researching ACHs, and I wanna know what you care about. And you know, this could influence what I choose to research, what they choose to research. So if you have any ideas here, I would love to hear them. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, ideas, anything at all. Here's some references if you're interested in looking at some of the research that I pulled together to develop these design considerations. And thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to be here and to share your knowledge and to participate in this session. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Sue, for organizing.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. And I got a private chat message from somebody who said I want her contact information because they wanted to learn more. So I think this is one of those things, at least for me, I don't know about you all, but you know, just where you have it, and then it would be interesting to come back with another conversation because as people are thinking about things, right? And so yeah, so thank you, and thanks to all of you for participating, and happy Monday.
Indeed.
Yay.
Almost there. All right. Thank you, Sue. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.